licentious son Yazid as the caliph. The problem was that Yazid did not pretend to have respect for Islam like his father did. Now, he was to become the ruler of Muslims, and to take control over them, he found no clue but to make Hussein pay allegiance to him. Yazid knew that if Hussein obeys him, people would respect and follow him too, as Muslims trusted and respected Hussein. Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet of Islam, who knew the words of God with his flesh and blood, was forced to pay allegiance to Yazid. But as a consequence of Hussein's refusal, Yazid would have killed him. He brought his family and companions together and consulted with them. In order to prevent war and riot, they decided to leave their hometown Medina for Mecca. Before they leave, Hussein left his will with a close friend in which he mentioned, "Indeed, I did not leave out of self-conceit or vanity, neither to cause corruption nor oppression. Rather, I left in order to seek reform in the nation of my grandfather, Prophet Muhammad, and father, Imam Ali. I wish to promote virtue and prevent vice." On Sunday, 29th of Rajab, Hussein and his family left Medina to head towards the holy city of Mecca, traveling 428 kilometers across 4 nights and 5 days. They arrived in Mecca on Friday the 4th of Sha'ban. Mecca was busy with preparations. People from all over the Muslim nation were going to Mecca to perform Hajj. As people heard about the presence of the grandson of the Prophet and the reason behind his journey, they started to show their disapproval of Yazid and their support and alliance for Hussein. During the time of more than 4 months that Hussein and his family stayed in Mecca, news had reached Kufa of Hussein's refusal to give allegiance to Yazid. Thousands of people living in Kufa wrote letters to Hussein telling him that they wanted to help him and stand up, insisting that an obeying army is awaiting him. "There is no Imam over us, therefore come, through you may God unite us under truth and guidance." As some 12,000 letters had already reached Hussein, inviting him to be the leader of Muslims in Kufa. Hussein decided to send his cousin, Muslim son of Aqil, to Kufa to see if the Kufans were true in their support. Muslim and his 2 young sons, with some other companions of Hussein, headed towards Kufa with the letter of Hussein to Kufans. In the name of God, the Merciful, the Compassionate. From Al-Hussein ibn Ali to the leaders of the believers and the Muslims. I have understood everything which you have described and mentioned. I am sending to you my cousin, Muslim ibn Aqil, who is the trustworthy member from my house. If he writes to me that the opinions of your leaders and the men of wisdom and merit among you is united in the same way, I will come to you speedily, God willing. For by my life, what is the Imam except who judges by the book, upholds justice, professes the religion of truth and dedicates himself to the cause of God. As the days of Hajj were approaching, Hussein learned that the governor of Medina, Amr ibn Sa'id, had followed him to Mecca with orders given by Yazid to assassinate him. Thus, Hussein decided to leave Mecca with his family. Hussein's friends and well-wishers in Mecca tried their best to discourage him from going to Kufa, but Hussein convinced them, saying, "I'm afraid that they may dishonor the house of God by shedding my blood in this land." On the other hand, Hussein had received a letter from his cousin Muslim, who had confirmed that the Kufans were ready to support him. Therefore, just 2 days before the pilgrimage ritual began, Hussein and his family left Mecca for Kufa, not knowing that the Kufans, having been threatened by Yazid's governor, had left Muslim alone, not even knowing that Muslim was going to be martyred on the next day.
There has been long silence, and I apologize for that. So let's have a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. While Brother Musa is coming, I just please you with few more lines about Imam Ali alayhi salam. And I will ask you the price of that because I don't do poetry for free. So, but I don't want your money for my pocket. I will tell you afterwards what I want from you as price. So again, it's Urdu poetry, and that is कि आफाक के अतराफ की वुसअत में अली है. आफाक के अतराफ की वुसअत में अली है, रहमत में मोहम्मद है तो हैबत में अली है. और संगों की परस्तिश तो मुसलमान नहीं करते, संगों की परस्तिश तो मुसलमान नहीं करते. काबे की सआदत है कि संगत में अली है. और मौलूद है गर नौ तो कुरान किसने सिखाया, मुमकिन है कि कुरान की इबारत में अली है. या बहुत शुक्रिया. और लाजिम है कि मखलूक में जलवा हो खुदा का, लाजिम है कि मखलूक में जलवा हो खुदा का. जलवों के कई रंग हैं, रंगत में अली है. और जिब्रील को ये फ़ख्र के उस्ताद अली है, खालिक को ये है फ़ख्र के खिलकत में अली है. और अस्मा हैं सभी खूब, मानी भी हंसी हैं. अल्लाह है जलालत में तो अज़मत में अली है. सलावत.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بثنائك وأناخت برحلك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر الأهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليكم جميع أهل البيت ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات. Respected scholars, elders of the community, brothers and sisters in Islam and those in humanity, may peace and blessings be upon you all. My sincerest of condolences to you this day on this 6th of Muharram, on the tragedy of Abu Abdullah Imam Hussain alayhi salam. I have to run through a few announcements and do a few housekeeping issues at the start, so just please bear with me. Firstly, can I kindly request a dua for several mu'mineen and mu'minat who are unwell. A number of you have given me names today. I'll try and read them all if I can, and I do apologize if I do forget somebody, but you're all in our du'as. So, Shifa for Sayyid Ghazanfar Ali Shah, Saif Ali, and Aqil Bhai, who are related to a brother here called Brother Atiq, Jafar Nazir, Yawar Ali, Sayyid Murid Hussain, as well as Sister Rehana Mazhari. All these brothers and sisters are in need of our du'as. And this majlis, today's majlis, has been sponsored by the family of Brother Ahsan Sheikh and his wife, Sister Fatima. So there is a request for a Fatiha for Sheikh Manzoor Ali and the deceased and his deceased descendants. So can you kindly put your hands together and recite a Surah Al-Fatiha in the hope that it is a source of maghfirah for those who have passed away, and it is a source of shifa for those who are in need of good health. So Al-Fatiha. Salawat. Today's presentation, today's source of information, I guess, is from the Manchester Community and Youth Project. So Manchester Community and Youth Project is a partner organization with the 10th Day in providing logistics to make this program happen. I myself am the founder of the Manchester Community and Youth Project. This is our 5th year running as an organization, and we provide logistics support as well as grants of up to £300 to £500 for the youth of the community. Our bread and butter work is related to youth work. We are also partnered with 10th Day in taking the annual trip to visit Imam Hussain alayhi salam on the Arba'in. Over the course of the year, 5 years, we've been involved in a number of projects, including food drives, as well as grants for medical expenses for mu'mineen over the world, sponsorship of weddings for those needy brothers and sisters who are wanting to get married but perhaps don't have the resources to, as well as providing Qarz al-Hasana, sponsorship of orphans in Najaf, in Karbala, in Pakistan as well as providing scholarships for talented students who perhaps don't have the means to go to university or get a good education. So we provide grants for that, as well as social enterprise. So if somebody has a good business idea, but they're short of funding, we try and source that funding for them. So that's what the Manchester Community and Youth Project does. There is a short clip. So the pictures you see here are for our visit that we did in Najaf to an orphanage, where we met some of the children who had lost their parents to ISIS, to Daesh, and we meet these children every single year on the Arba'in trip, where we take goodie bags, presents and things like that on behalf of the community of Manchester and the UK. My humble request to you is that we're not asking for any donations, we're asking for something far more valuable, which is a bit of your time to fill in a short questionnaire at our stall. In essence, what we're trying to do is to provide a networking platform for the youth in Manchester. So say, for example, there is a youth who comes and says, I need to know somebody in the community who's a mechanical engineer, or I need to know somebody in the community who's a doctor, and I need to get a work experience placement or something like that. So we want to be as a resource for both the young people. We want to offer a source of networking, but also we want the professionals of the community to come forward and tell us what their skills and expertise are, so we can be a point of connection between the youth and the professional generation who can mentor and help. So if you could kindly fill in this questionnaire, it'd be really, really valuable in terms of gaining that insight, in terms of allowing us to understand what is the true need, in terms of what is it that the youth of the community needs, if it's to do with mental health, if it's to do with careers, if it's to do with other things, and what is it that we as professionals in the community have to offer the youth. So that's the humble announcement on behalf of the Manchester Community and Youth Project. So thank you for listening to that. I would now like to request Sayyid Khamis to come forwards and open this majlis and pay his tribute to Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Please welcome the Sayyid with your loudest voices with a salawat.
बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद बुलंदतर सलावत.
ला इलाहा तो पढ़ लिया, अब ले मज़ा तासीर का, ला इलाहा की तह के नीचे खून है शब्बीर का, ला इलाहा के पढ़ने वालों, ला इलाहा से पूछ लो, ला इलाहा तो बच गया, घर लुट गया शब्बीर का, ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मोहम्मद रसूल अल्लाह, ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मोहम्मद रसूल अल्लाह की लाजवाल दरसगाह हुसैन, हुसैन है न जिसकी कोई मिसाल है, न जिसकी कोई नज़ीर है, न जिसकी कोई मिसाल है, न जिसकी कोई नज़ीर है, वो बेमिसाल शहनशाह हुसैन है, ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मोहम्मद रसूल अल्लाह की लाजवाल दरसगाह हुसैन है, हुसैन रूह कायनात है, हुसैन फ़ख्र मोजज़ात है, हुसैन रूह कायनात है, हुसैन फ़ख्र मोजज़ात है, खुदा ने जिसको मरहबा है नफ्स मुतमइन कहा वो करबला का मुस्तफ़ा हुसैन है। ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मोहम्मद रसूल अल्लाह की लाजवाल दरसगाह हुसैन है। हुसैन ला इलाहा की जिंदगी हुसैन अंबिया की बंदगी। हुसैन ला इलाहा की जिंदगी हुसैन अंबिया की बंदगी। ला इलाहा से पूछ लो के सारी कायनात में सिर्फ बिना ला इलाहा हुसैन है। ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मोहम्मद रसूल अल्लाह की लाजवाल दरसगाह हुसैन है। हरम में हश्र का समा हुआ फूफी से जब सकीना ने कहा। हरम में हश्र का समा हुआ फूफी से जब सकीना ने कहा मुझे ना नींद आती है मैं सोऊं किसके सीने पे। कहाँ चला गया मेरा हुसैन है। ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह। ए हाशमी जवानों क्या हुआ कहाँ चले गए हो बावफा। है हाशमी जवानों क्या हुआ कहाँ चले गए हो बावफा। सदा ये फातिमा की थी के रन में कोई भी नहीं अकेला रह गया मेरा हुसैन। हुसैन है। ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह। तड़प चुकी शबीए मुस्तफ़ा मगर हुसैन ही डटा रहा। तड़प चुकी शबीए मुस्तफ़ा मगर हुसैन ही डटा रहा। पिसर जवां की लाश पे पिसर जवां की लाश पे है मुतमईन खड़ा रहा। ये वो खलील करबला हुसैन हुसैन है ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मोहम्मद रसूल अल्लाह की लाजवाल दरसगाह हुसैन है। अपने खून का गुसल मिला कफन है जिसका खाके करबला। अपने खून का गुसल मिला कफन है जिसका खाके करबला। दफन बहन न कर सकी है धूप में पड़ा रहा ये वो गरीब करबला हुसैन। हुसैन है ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मोहम्मद रसूल अल्लाह की लाजवाल दरसगाह हुसैन है। पड़ी है रन में लाश जा बजा जले ख़याम कुछ भी ना बचा। पड़ी रही है रन में लाश जा बजा जले ख़याम कुछ भी ना बचा। हरम के सर से छीन ली यजीदियों ने चादरें यूं करबला में लुट गया हुसैन। हुसैन है ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मोहम्मद रसूल अल्लाह की लाजवाल दरसगाह हुसैन है। न जिसकी कोई मिसाल है न जिसकी कोई नज़ीर है वो बेमिसाल शहनशाह हुसैन। हुसैन है ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह।
अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद।
गरूर टूट गया कोई मर्तबा न मिला, गरूर टूट गया कोई मर्तबा न मिला, सितम के बाद भी कुछ हासिले जफा न मिला। सरे हुसैन मिला है यजीद को लेकिन शिकस्त ये है कि फिर भी झुका हुआ न मिला।
Salawat. Thank you, Brother Khamis, for that beautiful tribute to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and how he is the basis of our faith and how belief in him is as though we're reciting the very basic shahada of Islam. I'd now like to request Sayyid Faiz to come forward and deliver a short presentation about the 10th day and its activities. But before I do so, can I kindly request that the brothers just come forward slightly and fill the gaps so that those who are coming in later in the Majlis have enough spaces to sit. It is said that when Rasulullah used to enter a gathering, he would always go and sit and fill the space that he would find. So be considerate and humble in this gathering of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. And my request also goes to the sisters that kindly, those at the front, just fill in the spaces. If you see a space in front of you, please fill it in so that those who are coming afterwards have the space to sit and participate in this gathering to mourn Imam Hussain alayhi salam. So kindly, if you could just make room for your brothers and for your sisters. Please welcome Sayyid Faiz with the salawat.
Thank you very much, Brother Musa. Just want to apologize, first of all, for obviously we are running slightly behind the schedule. But when we were considering to do this Muharram, there were a few objectives we had which we wanted to gain from this Majlis. Obviously, the main and the primary objective was the azadari of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. But obviously, the 10th day is all about Imam Hussain alayhi salam. We want to familiarize the people who don't know about Imam Hussain. We want to familiarize them with Imam Hussain, and that being the target, 95% target audience, being the non-Muslims in the UK. And alhamdulillah, with your help, so far since 2012, we have achieved considerable, significant achievements. To start with, we have linked, very close links with the Haram of Imam Hussain alayhi salam and Abul Fazl al-Abbas. They have helped us in every way, and we have helped them wherever we could. We have provided, we have created an app, travel app for the Haram of Hazrat Imam Hussain alayhi salam. In addition to that, we have been on ITV for what we did in the food drive 3 years ago, sorry. We have close links with the Christian charities. So it's a continuous process where we are trying to develop, and we are giving, people have for thousands of minutes every month, people are watching our YouTube videos, they are getting information, they are putting comments where non-Muslims, they are coming to us through our social media. The peace walk we have done previously for the last 3 years, the non-Muslim students of Manchester University, when they observed the peace walk, they have written articles about it, which are saved in the anthropology department of Manchester University Library. So alhamdulillah, it is being noticed. Your help and your support is not going unnoticed. Yes, it is too much. However, what we can do is a little bit more. How unfair is that? That when I want to book Eid day after Ramadan, I go and tell my manager in my office that I want to book day off because it's Eid after Ramadan, and the whole world knows. The Prime Minister of Great Britain and the Secretary of the Home Secretary, they put some tweets about it. But why can't I tell it's Thursday on Ashura? Ashura is on Thursday, it's a working day. Why can't I go to my manager and say, look, it's the Ashura of Imam Hussain and I want to book day off? These are resources filed on our website. It's a downloadable file. It's a presentation on Muharram. It has been approved by the Human Resources Department of government agency, a government regulatory body. The presentation was delivered in the presence of head of the department. It was, the people present were all non-Muslims. The people who were present, they were Christians, Jews, and atheists. And no problem was actually heard. So if you go to the 10thday.com resources page, you can download it. You don't have to do it on the day of Ashura. You don't have to do it before Muharram. You can do it after the Ashura. You can do it after Muharram, anytime. It's a very, no controversies. It's about what is the Islamic New Year, why don't we celebrate, and what's the event because of that we don't celebrate, and instead we commemorate the Islamic New Year. when it was delivered, the two other teams, they asked for it to be delivered. So inshallah, this year it will be delivered in different teams. Do that. Talk about Hussain if you love Hussain. Don't hide your faith. हर कौम बहुत शुक्रिया. Yes, so senior brother has recited 2 lines of Iqbal, Pakistan. Sorry, Josh Maliawadi, who was Urdu famous poet. That if you let the obviously it's translation, you know, you get lost in translation. Let people wake up, and every nation will say Hussain is ours. Okay. Okay, so the next is Peace Walk. I've touched upon this. We have this year on 18th of September. It's a Saturday, so where you are coming here for Majalis from Bradford, Wales, Liverpool. Yesterday someone told me they have come from Glasgow. So come for the Peace Walk. It's Arba'in Manchester Peace Walk on 18th of September, Saturday. We start after Zohor, and we need your suggestions, and we need your support. Okay, I will come to that. I know that I read some poetry about Imam Ali, and you owe me for that. Okay, the next one. Okay, there you go. Okay, now you see, when we were doing it, we are very, we don't have large amount of volunteers. So very young volunteers, teenagers, they came to us and they said they want to volunteer. Now someone wants to volunteer for Imam Hussain Majlis. Can you say no to them? No, you don't have the authority because they are working for Imam Hussain. But because they don't have the experience, they don't know how to ask you. So my request is, when they ask you, number one, don't get annoyed. So apologies for that if they kind of ask you too many times. But don't let them down, please. Now, you know, many of you are helping us. You know, if I think Sayyid is here, Prophet Ibrahim, he was the, you know, Ulul Azm prophet, and he said to Allah that, you know, how do you make dead things alive? And Allah said, do you not have the belief? He said, yes, I have the belief, but I want to for the satisfaction. Even if you are already doing it, you know, just for the satisfaction of me and the volunteers, just fill in the standing order form once again. That's just, it will go a long way. 10 pound, 20 pound, 5 pound. I think there are about 500-600 people here in the hall. Can I hope that when I go at the end of the Majlis to the donation desk, they will not have a standing order form empty? Thank you very much. Please say salawat. Okay, just a couple of announcements. So there is a water pump appeal. So this is, I think Brother Musa have explained, it's a joint project between the 10th Day and Mancom. So it's basically you can donate £100 per water pump. These are being done in Pakistan. Pakistan is one of those countries which have been nominated by the UN, who are going to face a crisis in next few years. So we want to help them. There is clean drinking water issues. So please donate towards that. More information, I think Mancom is leading that project, so you can have information. The next one is Arba'in. For the last few years, the 10th Day and Mancom are organizing trips, Arba'in trips to Karbala, to Iraq. So please get in touch again with Brother Musa. I think one thing I have been notified that is ground package for $12.50, but I think they are considering the second option so basically get in touch. So basically just want to remind you that make sure when the brothers, young brothers, they are teenagers, when they ask you for a standing order form, please don't say no to them. Thank you. Say salawat.
We're trying to reduce the price of the Arba'in trip so that those who are having issues with affording, to be able to afford it, make it more affordable for the brothers. Can I kindly, humbly request, we're privileged to have Ustad Shahbaz and Khan Sahib with us today. If you would like, just please recite a little bit for us. Please welcome him with a loud salawat.
दरूद पढ़े मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद पर। मुजरे खल्क में इन आँखों ने क्या क्या देखा, मुजरे खल्क में इन आँखों ने क्या क्या देखा, पर कहीं से ते पैगंबर सना आका देखा, मुजरे खल्क में जाके ज़ैनब ने मदीने में कहा, सुग़रा से जाके ज़ैनब ने मदीने में कहा, सुग़रा से कहूँ किस मुँह से कि परदेस में क्या क्या देखा, मुजरे खल्क में मैंने देखा अलमे शाह को आलूदाए खून, मैंने देखा अलमे शाह को आलूदाए खून, मैंने अब्बास को बेजान लबे दरिया देखा, मुजरे खल्क में मैंने देखा अली असग़र का गला खून में तर मैंने देखा अली असग़र का गला खून में तर मैंने ज़ख्मी अली अकबर का कलेजा देखा मुजरे खल्क में एक गठड़ी शहदी पुश्त पे लाए उसमें एक गठड़ी शहदी पुश्त पे लाए उसमें मैंने टुकड़े हुए कासिम का सरापा देखा मुजरे खल्क में हाय क्यों हो न गई कोर के इन आँखों में हाय क्यों हो न गई कोर के इन आँखों से मैंने बेगोरो कफन भाई का लाशा देखा बेरदा खल्क ने उस बीबी के सर को देखा बेरदा खल्क ने उस बीबी के सर को देखा जिसकी मादर का किसी ने जनाजा देखा मुजरे खल्क में इन आँखों ने क्या क्या देखा मुजरे खल्क में दुरूद पढ़े मोहम्मद वाले।
Salawat. Once upon a time, there were two princes. They were brothers. It came to a time when the older prince was on his deathbed. A terrible poison was taking course through his veins. He was coughing out pieces of his liver. The younger prince comes to see him. He sees the state of his beloved older brother and he starts to weep. The older prince, what grieves you? The younger prince responds, I am grieved on account of the harm inflicted on you. There is no day like your own day, Ya Aba Abdullah. La yawmuka yawm, Ya Aba Abdullah. When 30,000 strong will assemble to kill you. Today is that day. A host of 30,000 is assembled today in front of Hussein. Sinan ibn Anas has arrived today with an army of 9,000. The sun has set on the 6th of Muharram. The day has passed. Hussein is camped on the banks of the Euphrates. Water and supplies are running thin. Hussein goes out to this army on his white camel with the Holy Quran in one hand. He is cheerful in catastrophe. He will never humiliate himself. They hear him and they start to weep. He is outnumbered, but he is not alone. Qasim, the orphan of Hassan, is with his uncle, and to him, death is sweeter than honey. To expand on the story of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and his nephew al-Qasim, we're honored to have with us Sayyid Mahdi Modarresi. Please welcome him with a loud salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم هب لنا رأفته ورحمته وعونه ودعاءه وخيره ورضاه، ما ننال به سعة من رحمتك وفوزا عندك يا كريم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتك. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى أبي الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the hastening of the reappearance of the Master, the Savior, the Avenger, Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Askari, recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You understand some of the themes of this series that we have been having, and I've had the honor and the privilege of presenting to you. One of which is the clear and present danger that surrounds us in this day and age. The fact that our most fundamental beliefs are being attacked. Every single aspect of our religion, our faith, is now under attack. The enemy, often wolves in sheep's skin, often presenting themselves as proponents of religion, as proponents of faith. They're utilizing what they call a scorched earth policy, where they carpet bomb the entire landscape. And they use as much weaponry, as much terror as they can possibly muster. So they're not targeting just one aspect. It's not just the fundamental tenets of the faith, for instance. It's also matters of morals and ethical teachings. It's also the critical and primary texts. It's also the interpretation of those texts. It's also everything down to the finest laws and etiquettes. Everything is fair game as far as these people are concerned. Satan is intensifying his work. Is this a harbinger of big things that are about to take place? Could this be the fluctuations and the turbulence and the tumultuous period prior to the reappearance of the Master, I don't know. كذب الوقاتون. The Imam says that whoever tells you when it will happen, when he will reappear, they are liars. But we can only hope that given the intensity of the enemy attacks, that we should turn to God and pray and beg and plead and hope that we find a means with which we can fight all of this off. And as I said, they present themselves as representatives of the faith. That's what Satan does. If Satan was visible, if we could see him in his true physical form, no one would fall for him. That's why he's invisible. The ones who come, especially in the early days of the pandemic, I'm sure you all remember, it's not too long ago, those who were trying to cast doubt about the reality of the pandemic, the veracity, the danger that lurked, those people who came and said that the virus is not real, it's a hoax. See, that person never presents himself as a homeless person. They never present themselves as someone who has no expertise in the field. They will wear a stethoscope. They will present themselves as experts, as doctors, as physicians, as immunologists. They will come forward and use medical jargon and vernacular. Otherwise you wouldn't fall for them, you wouldn't believe them. And that's exactly what's happening on the religious front. They speak using verses of the Holy Quran. They quote traditions of the ahlebait. But they twist and turn those facts and those truths to the point where they are not recognizable anymore. And that's how they're able to get those who are feeble-minded, those whose understanding of the faith is shallow and weak and not resting on strong foundations. That's how they get them. I love this example. A friend of mine shared it with me. He said this child went to school one day, and he said to the other school children, he presented them with a presentation. He made a presentation. And he said to them that there is a substance, a chemical that is extremely dangerous. And I want to tell you about the dangers of this chemical. Once you've watched my presentation, I then want to ask you to vote that this chemical is banned forever because of how dangerous it is. So he presented it. He said the name of the chemical is dihydrogen oxide. Have you heard about that? Extremely dangerous stuff. Don't get near it. He said, look, number one, this chemical is the cause of death of countless people around the world. Number two, this is extremely dangerous when it's in gaseous form. It can cause severe burns. Number three, it is found in tumors. It's found in acid rain. Number four, and he kept going on and on and on about the dangers of this chemical, dihydrogen oxide. Children, be very careful. Parents, make sure they don't get near it. He then said, okay, should we then ban this chemical given all the dangers that it poses? And of course, most of them voted that it should be banned. Then he said, do you know what dihydrogen oxide is? It's H2O. Literally, it's water. When it's in gas form, there's boiling water, therefore it's hot, therefore it causes severe burns. When it is found in acid rain, because it's water, there's acid in the water. It's found in tumors, of course it's found in tumors, it's found in cells, it's found throughout the body. It causes the death of countless people because a lot of people drown in it. But you see how the facts are twisted? These are actual, factual points about water, and yet, depending how these twisted minds try to present them, that's when deception happens. That's when confusion creeps in. Because deviation doesn't come about in an instant, now does it? Just like getting lost doesn't happen with just one step. You take one step in the wrong direction, then another, then another, then another, then another, and then before you know it, you're lost and you don't know your way back. That's how it works. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in numerous locations across the Holy Quran, do not follow khutuwat al-shaytan. Don't follow the footprints, the steps of the shaitan. When you see something about an individual that just doesn't add up, there's something wrong with this person. He's trying to make me doubtful as opposed to providing me with certainty. Because that's what they do. They question the most fundamental tenets of the faith, all in the name of reform. We are reformists. We want islah, just like Imam Hussain. Islah and the most fundamental tenets and foundations of the faith. 14 centuries of scholarship, giants, oracles of the faith, people who have devoted their lives to these sciences, and suddenly you're some genius who happened to realize that every single scholar was a mushrik, every single scholar was a deviant. You're the only one who's now the one who holds the mantle of guidance and reform and islah. You're the Imam Hussain of the day? You little imbecile. But that's how it's presented, one step after another, questioning the faith in the name of puritanical reform, which is literally what Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab said and did. The founder of the Wahhabi religion said the same thing. He said this religion requires reform. How do we reform it? By creating the Wahhabi movement. Every Muslim is a kafir, every Muslim is a deviant, every Shia needs to be killed. This is the religion of the Holy Prophet. That's what these people are doing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah At-Tawbah, He says, أَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ. As for those in whose hearts there is perversity, there is sickness, there is a disease in their hearts, فَزَادَتْهُمْ رِجْسًا إِلَىٰ رِجْسِهِمْ. They have filth added to their own filth. And in the end, they will end up in the fires of hell. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Zurarah ibn A'yan reports from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam in Tafsir al-Ayyashi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. In Tafsir al-Ayyashi, Imam al-Baqir tells us when God says filth is added to their own filth, زادتهم شكا إلى شكهم. It adds to their confusion. When they have doubt, Allah increases their doubt. When you begin with doubt, you will not reach certainty. You have to start with certainty. You have to start with those fundamental bedrocks. You have to build up, you don't build down. You start with the most obvious truths and then you work your way up. That's how it works. The Holy Prophet says, Al-aqlu aslu dini. The intellect, aql, as is defined by the Holy Quran and the traditions of the ahlebait, is the bedrock of my religion. It's easy. The beliefs that you have been taught as children from your parents, your fathers, your mothers, may Allah bless them, or from your teachers, or from the local scholars, those basic principles of belief that you have been taught from childhood, those are based on incredibly strong foundations, brothers and sisters. We have all the proof in the world to defend every single one of them to the death. If we didn't, you'd think we'd survive today? You'd think we would have been spared for the last 14 centuries? Non-stop persecution, non-stop death, carnage, murder, bloodshed. You think if we didn't have strong foundations, you would today have close to 500 million Shia for the ahlebait. 500 million getting together to remember Imam Hussain. And every single one of them, their heart beats, Ya Hussain. Their heart beats, Labbaik Ya Hussain. Labbaik Ya Hussain. It all rests on a very solid foundation. And what I want to do tonight, brothers and sisters, with that introduction, is I want to use the rest of the time allocated to me in this lecture to establish for you the most fundamental beliefs in our beautiful religion with nothing more than two conditions, two things. Number one, I would be addressing people who have the intellectual capacity to understand basic facts. That's all you need, number one. Number two, to have a genuine desire to know the truth, to not be bogged down and shackled down by biases and prejudices and so forth. To open your heart, use your intellect, tell me at any point, if I say something that contradicts the intellect, if I say something that goes against your reason, I would love for you to get up and object and tell me that I'm wrong. Honestly, I'm open to that. Please do. If you have any objections, if you have any problems, if it requires further clarification, I'm happy to do so after the program. So, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says that inna hujjat Allah, the proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-hujjatul wadiha. God's proof is clear. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. It's clear as daylight. As I said, it doesn't require much, but the use of the intellect and, as I said, a desire to know the truth. So, Bismillah. Imagine, pay close attention. Imagine you take a book about advanced level mathematics that discusses theoretical physics, calculus, game theory, all these college level type of mathematical notions. And you present that to a mathematician who doesn't believe in God, but who checks those two boxes. He has an intellect, he has a desire to know the truth. You present this book to the mathematician. Please take a look. Take a read. Then you bring a neuroscientist and you take a book that discusses the latest and most cutting edge theories and practices in neurophysiology, cognitive neurosurgery. And you present this to the neurologist. So the neurologist and the mathematician each open their respective books. They start going through it. They notice that the books are well presented, well structured. There are interesting theories there, things that perhaps they hadn't come across before. So what they will then do is that most likely they'll turn the book and read the cover. They'll say, who's the author of the book? And you respond by saying, oh, this book doesn't have an author. It just came about, you know, evolution or whatever. Another book wrote this book. Here's a brilliant idea. Or the book has always been there since time immemorial, infinitely existent. The mathematician is an intelligent person. They're not stupid. The neurologist is not stupid. They'll say, but that doesn't make any sense. Are you making a mockery of me? You'll say, why? What's the problem? They'll say that this book is well presented, it is well structured, the theories, the ideas, everything about it screams that the book has an author. Even a child will laugh at this suggestion. So that's when you grab their wrist and you tell them, thank you very much for that. A book that contains some equations and formulae and discussions which, albeit are rather advanced and analysis that is deep and whatnot, but if a book with this description must by necessity have an author, then the book of this universe, this mind-bendingly vast, infinitely complex universe that we find ourselves in on this tiny blue dot of a planet, having a first row seat, watching the exquisite, breathtaking beauty and grandeur of the universe. This book doesn't have an author. This world doesn't have a creator. Explain that to me. And so all it takes is for you to think. How old are you? 20 years, 30 years, 50 years? 100 years ago, where were you? You didn't exist. Now you do. Who brought you into existence? How did you come about? You are a phenomenon, which is a word taken from a Greek origin, which means something that comes about, something that is now visible. You are a phenomenon, meaning you didn't exist before. Now you do. How did that happen? You come across a work site, a construction site. You drive past it one day. And then 12 months later, you happen to be crossing the same area. And as you drive past the construction site, you notice there's a 12-story building. If somebody told you that this building just came about on its own, wouldn't that be ridiculous? Isn't that absurd? Again, you don't need to be a rocket scientist. Just use your faculty of intellect. Oh, no. It was just, the steel and the iron and the bricks and the cement all just, came together, and now you have this beautiful, sophisticated building. Are you kidding me? I mean, what is this? You take this ring, you didn't have it before, you put it on. Your friend sees you. Where'd you get that ring from? Oh no, I didn't get it from anywhere, it just appeared on my hand. No one made it, no one created it. This microphone, this chair, that desk, this camera, everything that you see around you, they just came about. Does that make any sense? Am I making any sense right now? No. And when you take a look at the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's why they say, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. In other words, to be an atheist, you have to make so many assumptions to try and come up with some kind of a coherent, and there is no coherent explanation, but some kind of theory that's going to dupe yourself and others into thinking that the world came about on its own. There's a word for something that didn't exist, but then it did, and it did so on its own. Do you know what that word is? Magic. I'm sorry. I don't believe in this. I don't believe that this incredible, sophisticated universe could just pop into existence without any creator, without anyone bringing it about. When you observe creation, when you look at the universe around you, when you look at yourself, you recognize that the author of this book, that the creator of this book, just like the book on mathematics and neuroscience, is capable, is knowledgeable, right? You can deduce that just by looking at the book without even knowing who the author is. You may not know whether the author is a man or woman, someone who's young, someone who's old. You have no idea what the color of their eye is. You have no idea whether they're black, white. None of that matters at this point. But you can definitively deduce the fact that the author of this well-presented, well-structured, sophisticated book of science, number one, exists. There has to be one. Number two, he or she or whatever it is must be knowledgeable, must be wise, must be skillful, must be dexterous, must be scientifically astute. You can deduce all that without any coercion. Am I forcing you to believe these things? Or is it obvious? It is as obvious as me sitting in front of you right now talking to you, right? And so when you look at the universe, again, the existence of God, who is omnipotent, meaning he is all powerful. He can do, if he can do this, then he could do anything. He's omnipotent. He's also omniscient, meaning that he has infinite knowledge. Again, you can deduce that immediately. Doesn't even take any effort in the process. Just a little thinking. Why does the hadith say that كانت أكثر عبادة أبي ذر التفكر التفكر ساعة خير من عبادة 100 عام. All these hadith about thinking, about contemplation. This kind of thinking, this kind of contemplation, to look, observe, and make obvious deductions. Not the kind of thinking that would question the fundamentals of the faith, or question, for instance, the rules of Islam. That's not, we'll talk about that inshallah later. So you observe this universe, you believe in the creator, who also comes with all of these attributes. There's no question about any of them. And you know he's wise. You know that none of this was random. How? Look at yourself in the mirror. Just take a quick look. And you'll see signs of his wisdom all over yourself. Forget the world, forget the rest of the universe. Just your face. In fact, not just your face. Let's zoom in on the eye, but not talk about the eye, because the eye is an ineffable miracle on its own. Let me talk about the stuff around the eye, right? Number one, the fact that the eye itself is embedded into a socket, as opposed to it being sticking out in order to protect it, in order to shield it from danger, because it's very sensitive. So there's a socket, the eyeballs are inside of it, number one. Number two, look at the eyebrows, which do two things, at least as far as we know. Number one, other than the aesthetics of it, the beauty of it, number one, they shield the eye from dirt, from sweat. Even the shape of the eyebrows is designed to filter things away from the eye and to the sides of the face. Number two, it is a means of communication. It allows you to express emotion, subhanallah. Just the eyebrows. The eyelashes, everything. Again, we're not even talking about the eye itself. Then come to your mouth. Oh, the eyelids, subhanallah. Who thinks about the miracle of the eyelids? Who appreciates their eyelids? I read this news article a few years back, and I talked about it in some programs, where this poor guy has acid thrown into his face, and it was an accident. The target was someone else, and so this poor person on Christmas Day, he says that when the acid was poured into my face, and it was right here in the United Kingdom, he said, all of my clothes just melted away. So imagine what it did to his face. So very long story short, an incredibly arduous journey short, he said that I went through something like 25 reconstructive surgeries. 25 plastic surgeries to try and take skin from my shoulders and my back to try and fix my face, and just a painful read, let alone having to go through that experience. And then he said, at the end of it all, I almost came to the brink of death, and they declared, they told my family that you should come and say your goodbyes, and all of that aside, he said, at the very end, what was the most painful thing about this experience? What is the worst thing in your view, having gone through all of this? Do you know what he said? He said, the fact that I don't have eyelids. Because without eyelids, I can't close my eyes. And without closing my eyes, I have a plethora of problems. My eyes get dry and I have to constantly moisturize them. Plus, I can't sleep. I can't shield the light. I'm always, imagine your eyes are always wide open. The miracle of the eyelids. The mouth, the teeth, the way they're structured, every single cell in your body screams that there is a creator, there is a God. Every single organ, every single part of you. أَيَكُونُ لِغَيْرِكَ مِنَ الظُّهُورِ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ. Salamullah alayk ya Aba Abdullah. In Dua Arafah, the Imam said, oh Allah, is there anything in this universe that is clearer and that is more obvious and more apparent than you, so that we would have to use those things in order to prove your existence? Your existence is the most manifest truth. It is the most obvious thing in the entire universe. عَمِيَتْ عَيْنٌ لَا تَرَاكَ. Blind is the eye, not the one that isn't able to see the room. Blind is the eye that does not see you, Ya Allah. It is that clear. Now, we've established the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know how many minutes it took us, but was that hard? Was that too difficult to digest? Right. Now that we've established that this God, this creator, is number one, omniscient. He knows all. Omnipotent. He's all powerful. He is wise, right? He created all of this universe. Now we know, by means of simple deduction, that he does not need anybody else. He's needless. If he knows all, and he can do all, and he owns everything, does he need anybody? No. So why would he then create us? This is a fundamental question. People going through adversity, going through problems and depression and whatnot, they'll often ask this question. Why? Why am I here? What's the purpose of my life? Well, let me give you a very, very simple answer to that. Again, start with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His attributes, and then follow along. He doesn't need us. That's a fact. We know this. Someone who has all of this doesn't need me. That's for sure. Then why did He create me? There's only one other option. One other choice, which is that He created me to bestow His mercy upon me. Because He also has no need to punish me now, does He? He has no need to make me suffer. He doesn't need anything. So the only reason that this omnipotent, omniscient, wise creator would want with some creature like me is to bestow His benevolence upon me. It is to allow me to grow, to allow me to reach a higher status, to be a better person. You see how this explains suffering. This explains trials. This explains tribulations. Again, I'm not forcing any of this on you. So He's trying to bestow His mercy upon me. But how does that happen? How does this ineffable, indescribable creator of the infinite universe, how does He communicate with someone like me? He must then create a means with which He can communicate, a means with which He can deliver His message to us, a way to show us the best route to His pleasure and His benevolence, right? So the need for prophets, messengers, apostles, representatives, proofs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is established. There has to be some way. And so he sends these prophets and these messengers and these representatives. Now, imagine if this proof, this representative, he came, he grabbed our hands and he led us straight into the bottom of a ditch. He led us astray from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that make sense? If this proof and representative of God, if this agent of God was a means of our deviation, a sinner, a liar, a cheater, a deceiver, does that make any sense? No. What if he does that by accident? It's not deliberate, it's inadvertent. In other words, out of his ignorance and stupidity, this agent of God can lead you and I into our destruction. Does that make any sense? Therefore, this agent of God, number one, has to be picked by God and God alone. We don't pick our khulafa. We don't pick our leaders. God has to pick them. Why? Because if I pick them, I would pick someone like me. I would pick another sinner just like me. I would pick another deficient, incapable individual just like me. Because that's who we are. And then this imbecile comes out and tells you that, oh, if they were sinless, if they had knowledge of the unseen, they wouldn't be good role models. What does that even mean? A role model has to be perfect if he is going to allow me to reach the creator of the universe. That path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be perfect. The leader has to be perfect. If he sins, if he makes a mistake, whether deliberately or inadvertently, then what's the point? The idea is to reach God. The idea is to reach His benevolence, His mercy, is to go to paradise. It is to grow. But if he makes mistakes, again, either deliberately or inadvertently, then what's the point? So we can't choose that agent of God, that representative of God. He has to choose them. And they must be purified. They must be sinless. They must be inerrant. They must not commit any mistake, whether inadvertent or deliberate. So you establish asma. Then you come to these individuals. At this point, we're reaching the outer limits of the intellect. The intellect proves all of this in a methodical, systematic fashion. We've arrived now at the point where we accept the representatives of God, prophets, messengers, apostles, imams, all of these people. You accept their authority over you. You know that you must follow them. You know that you must obey them because they're the only ones who can take you to God. How do you identify them though? We've established the principle that there must be agents and representatives. But how do you know who's who? Every official organization, for example, the security forces, the police, immigration, any government official has to have some kind of identification. You have to present a badge, you have to present your credentials, right? So what's the means with which we can identify these agents of God, these representatives and proofs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? They have to have some kind of identification. So we establish miracles. We establish the fact that these individuals have to provide us with sufficient reason to believe that they are the true representatives of God. In other words, they have to be able to do things that no one else can. That's what a miracle is. Whether that miracle is in the form of throwing the staff and turning it into a dragon that devours all of the snakes of the sorcerers, or that miracle is raising the dead after they'd been buried, or the miracle is to turn fire into a cool oasis. none of which can be scientifically explained. That's the definition of a miracle. Don't even try to go there. A fire, by its very essence, creates heat. And that same fire, by the miracle of God, produces this cool breeze. Ya naru kuni bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim. Those are all miracles. Or the miracle could come in the form of a book. It comes in the form of a walking, talking book like Ali ibn Abi Talib. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Brothers, if I could just ask you, my apologies, but the gap between the brothers and sisters is very, very narrow. If you can all stand up and just take maybe a step forward, I would really appreciate it. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. So we've established God's existence, God's omnipotence, God's omniscience, God's wisdom. We've established prophethood. We've established the inerrant, infallible nature of God's proofs and representatives. Now imagine if there are people who worship this God, follow the guidance of the prophets, do what's right. They live their lives by the teachings of these representatives of God. And those who reject these representatives. Because again, you might say, well, if it's this simple, if it's this obvious, then how come there are people who reject God's existence? If it can be proven in 20 minutes in a lecture, surely people should all embrace belief in God. They should have no qualms or hesitation to surrender to this most obvious of all realities, right? That's a whole other discussion. Maybe the reason is arrogance. Maybe the reason is they just don't want to submit to a higher authority, which is the case quite often. Many a time you have these individuals. Or maybe it's because he knows that if he accepts God's existence, then he has to accept the fact that he sends prophets and messengers. And if he accepts that, then he needs to be bound by the laws delivered by the prophets and messengers. And he or she just wants to live it up. They just want to enjoy themselves. They want to have some fun. That's it. So they won't say A, so they don't have to say B, so they don't have to say C, and so on and so forth. So it could be that. It's not true that if we were able to present the facts and the truth, then people would accept it. That's not always the case. That's not always the case. You have people who are arrogant. You have people blinded by hubris. No matter what you do, they'll never accept the truth. I've encountered many people like that. So, after all of this, you have two groups: those who follow the guidance and leadership of these prophets and do the right thing, and those who refuse to do so. But then both of these groups die, dust to dust, ashes to ashes, and that's the end of the story. Does that make any sense? The good ones and the bad ones, they all end up dying anyway. So what's the point? Fatalism at its best. That does not make any sense. That omniscient, omnipotent, wise, skilled creator of the universe wouldn't have this. Those introductions don't lead to these conclusions, to this particular conclusion. So what has to happen? In this world, justice wasn't served. In this world, the good weren't remunerated and the bad weren't punished, right? You have someone who kills millions of people. Someone who comes along and commits atrocities that are unspeakable. And then they die. They commit suicide. Hitler committed suicide. That's it. Saddam was hanged. Is that enough? Yazid just died. Is that it? Does that make any sense? Absolutely not. In this life, there was no divine justice, so there must be divine justice in another life. We've established resurrection. Again, was that hard? Was that too complicated? I'm sure even the children understood all of that. Now, this is the principles of the faith. This is what we refer to as usuluddin. What about the furu'? This is where it kind of gets a little complicated. Because this is, in particular, the area where a lot of people seem to have a lot of opinions. There's no shortage of opinions on this. Why this? Why that? This doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. For example, if a husband divorces his wife, and this is just one out of, I guess, tens of thousands of others. A husband who divorces his wife, then the wife observes what's called as the iddah, right? Whether it's 3 cycles, 4 cycles, it differs from person to person. Whether the person, the woman is pregnant or not, it differs. Whether the woman has reached menopause or not, it differs. Young, old, there are different scenarios for all of these. But she observes the iddah. Then he remarries her. Then divorces her. And she observes the iddah. Then he marries her for the 3rd time. Then divorces her. She observes the iddah. At that point, if he wanted to go back to his wife, there's only one way to do so. What is it? She must marry another man, and the marriage must be consummated before she gets divorced, observes the iddah, then goes back to the first wife. Why? Why this iddah? Why not that iddah? Why 3 times and not 2 times or 4 times? Why is Salatul Subuh 2 units and Salatul Maghrib 3 units? Why is it that usury, charging or paying, is haram except between husband and wife and father and son? Why? What's the difference? If usury is bad, then it should be bad universally and across the board. But here we have exceptions. We have rules, we have exceptions, we have intricacies, we have nuances, we have details. We have all these fine discussions that take place at the Islamic seminaries. Why all of these? Well, if you experience a condition in your eye and you are not an ophthalmologist, you're not an expert, what do? You go to the expert is what you do. You don't treat yourself. You're not an expert. Simple as that. If you have another health condition, again, you have to consult the experts. Are we all experts in Islamic jurisprudence? Are we all religious experts? Are we? If we are not, because one of us is an engineer, the other is a doctor, the other is a taxi driver, the other is a carpenter, the other is a bricklayer, the other, then we're not experts in matters of religion then, are we? So what do? We refer to the experts. If I went to the doctor and the doctor said to me, I'm giving you this antibiotic and not that antibiotic, I don't debate with my doctor, do I? Because the doctor can rightly tell me, you are no expert, shut your mouth. Obviously, they're more respectful than that, but just be quiet. You're no expert. If I said to the doctor, why do I need to take this medicine for 5 days? Can't I just take it for 3 days? No, you can't. Why? It's not your business. Can I take it? Can I take 2 courses of this, for example? No, you can't. Why? It's not your job to know why. If you want to know the why to every question, go become an expert. Knock yourself out. Be an expert. It would be beautiful if everyone became an expert in religion and medicine and engineering and architecture and every single thing. It's just not practical now, is it? So what do? We refer to the experts. And the way it works is, if I establish that this doctor is number one knowledgeable, has the right qualifications, knows what he's doing, and he's reliable, he checks all the boxes, then I have to take his word for it. I have to accept what he tells me, unless I develop expertise in the field, or another equally qualified or more so comes along and tells me that there needs to be some adjustments made. You get a second opinion, sure. But it's not my job, it's not my position to express any views on these matters. It doesn't make sense to me. It's not supposed to. It's not supposed to. Who said that all of these Islamic rules have to make sense? Something that makes sense to me may not make sense to you. So God's job is to reveal a religion that is acceptable and makes sense to literally every single human being? Is he a God, or is he just some consultant that provides you with friendly advice that you can take or refuse to take? Is he the creator, or is he just a grocer? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once you recognize your inherent weakness, your deficiency in every conceivable way, Ilahi, Imam Hussain says once again, Dua Arafah, أنا الجاهل في علمي. I am ignorant even when I think I have knowledge. فكيف لا أكون جهولا في جهلي. How could I then not be excessively ignorant when I'm actually ignorant? If I'm not an expert, I refer to the experts. You have these people who come and tell you, but this rule doesn't make any sense. What's it to you? What's it to you? Many of these rules make absolutely no sense except to be a litmus test, to be an acid test, to test whether or not you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What part of the angels prostrating before a pile of mud made sense? That's literally what Shaitan said. He said, this doesn't make any sense. You created me from fire, you created whatever that is from mud. It's not even alive yet, and you want me to prostrate before it? That's shirk. That's haram. Because, you know, the whole neo-Salafi thing now going on in the Shia community. That's shirk. God says, I don't want your opinion. I don't want your views, your feedback, your input. Chuck those in the, the complaints box. I tell you to prostrate before this, you prostrate before it. It's like when you're about to board a plane. You know the airline is a reliable airline. You trust the company. You know they have a good track record. They don't have a lot of accidents and whatnot. You also trust that whoever the pilot of this aircraft happens to be must have been vetted, that the airline don't just take any person who lacks the experience and make them in charge of an aircraft, a commercial airliner with hundreds of passengers. So the pilot is also reliable. The pilot is someone you can trust. Once you get on board that plane, you can't pick and choose which rule to follow, which rule not to follow. If they tell you this is where you sit, this is where you sit. If they tell you you're not allowed to get up, you're not allowed to get up. If they tell you you can't do this, you can't do that, you have to put on your oxygen mask, you have to, everything they tell you, you have to follow. Why? Because it's a package deal. You're more than free to say that I don't want this religion. Of course, you'll have to deal with the consequences of that on the day of judgment. You're more than free to say, I don't want it. La ikraha fi din. But if you're going to be someone who follows this religion, it's a package deal. You can't then pick and choose. So you refer to experts. In this case, the experts are the ahlebait, are the imams, are God's representatives and proofs. Then it is the scholars, the jurists. What kind of scholars? Because again, anyone can claim to be a scholar. I could claim to be a scholar, an expert. What kind of expert? Imam al-Hasan al-Askari salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi says, the Imam says, وَأَمَّا مَنْ كَانَ مِنَ الْفُقَهَاءِ صَائِنًا لِنَفْسِهِ. Number one box to check is that these experts that you follow, that you emulate, that you consult, has to be faqih, has to be a jurist, has to be an expert in this field. You follow him not because he's articulate, not because he's proficient, not because he looks good, not because of the size of his turban, not because of how much money he has, not because of the number of students he's got in his institution. You follow him because he's a jurist, because he's devoted his life to the science. Number one. Number two, the Imam then says that he has to guard himself. He has to be the epitome of piety and taqwa. This person has to disobey his desires. He has no desire for the worldly pleasures, or if he does, he resists them. He's not someone who's in it for the money, for the fame, for the power, for the position. And finally, مُطِيعًا لِأَمْرِ مَوْلَاهُ. This person has to be obedient to his master, has to recognize that he has an imam, and that this imam watches over him, to be obedient, to be submissive, absolute submission. Harun al-Makki was this companion. Imam al-Sadiq is sitting down with one person who had come from Khurasan. That person was, the activist type. He's like, we need to stage a revolution. We need to do this. We need to do that. Yabna Rasulullah, why are you sitting down? Why aren't you resisting this evil, this, that? So, as he's talking, the Imam said to him, I know what I'm doing. In other words, the Imam's politely reminding him that I represent God. You don't tell me what to do, I tell you what to do. But the man kept insisting. The Imam said to him, how many do you think we have? How many followers? How many people who would actually listen to me? If I wanted to rally the troops, what do you think is going to happen? He said, you have hundreds of thousands of people. In Khurasan alone, I can get you 300,000. The Imam said, 300,000? He said, 500,000. 500,000? More. So as they're talking, the Imam asks his servant to turn on the oven, to set the light, to increase the heat. You could see the fire burning inside the furnace. So the Imam said to him, Ya Fulan, why don't you get up and jump into this burning furnace? As soon as the Imam said that to him, he thought that he must have insulted the Imam. And here is the Imam trying to teach him a lesson. So he said, Yabna Rasulullah, if I said anything to upset you, if I hurt you in any way, I'm sorry, I apologize. As he's apologizing to the Imam, suddenly Harun al-Makki walks in, one of the companions. The Imam called out to Harun as he was taking his shoes off. He had taken off one slipper, but not the other. So he was untying the shoelaces, right? The Imam said to him, Ya Harun, jump into the furnace. He didn't even wait to take off that shoe which he was trying to untie. He jumped right into it. Then the Imam asked the servant, he said, close the lid off. The Khurasani sitting next to the Imam, he said, the Imam suddenly started asking me about so-and-so in Khurasan. How is this guy? How is that guy? And he's there sweating like a fountain, thinking, what's happening to this poor guy burning inside the furnace? But the Imam spoke in the most casual manner. When he was done, the Imam then asked the servant to open the lid. When he opened it, he said, Harun, come back outside. فَخَرَجَ هَارُونَ وَهُوَ يَنْفِضُ الْغُبَارَ عَنْ لِبَاسِهِ. He came out while he was shaking his clothes so that the ashes would fall off. Ya Ali. What the Imams, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. what God's vicegerents want, what God wants is obedience. It is to be in line with the Imam of the time. It is to be with them, to maintain companionship with them. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. On the eve of Ashura, Aba Abdullah al-Hussein lifted the veils of the heavens and showed his companions what awaited them on the next day. He told them that you will be killed. He said that you will all be massacred. That even I will be martyred tomorrow. بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ. He even said that my brother Abbas will be killed. My son Ali al-Akbar will be killed. My infant boy Ali al-Asghar will be killed. It's at that moment that Qasim ibn al-Hasan stood up from the back of the crowd. Ya Aba Abdullah, Ya Am, your 6-month-old infant will die? The Imam said, yes. Everyone's going to get killed? Yes. What about me, Ya Aba Abdullah? Aw ana mimman yuqtal. Will I also die tomorrow? Now, may you never see the day, but just try and imagine you have a son, you have a nephew, you have a younger brother who is terminally ill and is in hospital. The doctors have said he or she doesn't have long to live. How do you break the news to this child? How do you have the heart to tell them that they will die? When Qasim ibn al-Hasan said, am I one of those people who will be killed tomorrow? Meaning, Ya Aba Abdullah, how could the 6-month-old infant die while there is blood coursing through my vein? How could the others die while I am still alive and breathing? Aba Abdullah is trying to prepare him. He asked him a question. He said, كيف وجدت الموت? كيف الموت عندك? How do you perceive death, my dear nephew? He responded by saying, يا عام فيك أحلى من العسل. It is sweeter than honey if it is with you, Ya Aba Abdullah. If it is in your cause, then it is the sweetest thing, Ya Aba Abdullah. On the day of Ashura, when his son Ali al-Akbar left, Imam Hussain gave him permission to go. When others came, Aba Abdullah gave them permission to go. But when Qasim came, how did he even approach Aba Abdullah? They say that at some point the voice of Imam al-Hussain was heard. Ala hal min nasirin yansuruna liwajhillah. ألا هل من ذاب يذب عن حرم رسول الله. There were 2 boys who came out of their tents upon hearing this. They were calling out, لبيك يا عمّا. Here we are, oh uncle. Al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan was one of them. He came to his uncle when he asked for permission to leave for the battlefield. Unlike the others that the Imam gave permission to go, Imam al-Hussein said, no, absolutely not. You will not go die. You are the one who reminds me of my brother Hassan. You are the orphan of my master Hassan. No, you are not going in. Arbab al-Maqatil, those that have narrated the maqtal of Aba Abdullah, they say, فَوَقَعَ الْغُلَامُ عَلَى رِجْلَيْ عَمِّهِ يُقَبِّلُهُمَا. How did he secure that permission? He fell to the ground and began kissing the feet of Aba Abdullah, saying, "Oh uncle, please give me permission. I beg you to let me go." He kissed his uncle's feet until eventually Imam Hussain embraced him. فَتَعَانَقَا سَاعَةً وَبَكَيَا. They both began crying. حَتَّى غُشِيَ عَلَيْهِمَا. They then fell unconscious, both Aba Abdullah and Qasim. When they regained consciousness, Aba Abdullah was ready to let his nephew go. He took his turban. Others have said the turban of Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba. The Imam took that turban, he cut it in half. He then took one half and cut it into another two halves. He took one of those pieces, he wrapped it around the boy's back. He was too young to wear an armor. He was too young to wear a shield. He wrapped it on his back. He took the other one and wrapped it on his head. Al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan was too young to ride a horse. He had nothing but his sword. When he came out, وَكَانَ يُهَرْوِلْ, he didn't just walk to the battlefield, he sprinted towards the enemy. He went there, they saw him. Some said, "Didn't we kill Hussein's son Ali al-Akbar? Who is this young boy? We haven't seen him. He's only 14 years old." They inquired about him. That is when he said, "In tunkiruni fa'ana najlul Hasan." If you don't recognize me, then I am the son of Hassan. Najlul Nabi al-Mustafa, Sibtun Nabi al-Mustafa wal-Mu'taman. I am the son of the grandson of Rasulullah, the Prophet of Allah. هذا حسين كالأسير المرتهن. Don't you see my uncle Aba Abdullah, who is like a prisoner who has no helper? One enemy combatant said, he said, "Wallah la uthkilanna bihi amma alayya athamul Arab." May the sins of all the Arabs rest on my shoulder if I didn't make his uncle grieve over him. Humayd ibn Muslim said, "I told him, don't you see him surrounded by so many vicious men? Leave him alone." He said, "I must kill him." He approached Qasim ibn al-Hasan. "Ajarakum Allah ya mu'minin, ya sahib al-amri wal-zaman." He struck Qasim. Out of all of the other martyrs of Karbala, when they were killed, they sent their salams to Aba Abdullah, except Qasim ibn al-Hasan. He said, "Amma adrikni, uncle, come to me. Oh uncle, come and save me." Aba Abdullah rushed to him. By the time he got to the young boy, وَكَانَ يَفْحَصُ بِرِجْلِهِ, he was shaking in the dirt. Imam Hussain cried out, "My nephew Qasim, عز والله على عمك أن تدعوه فلا يجيبك." It is hard for me that you call me, but I can't come to you. أو يجيبك فلا يغني عنك, or he comes to you but can't save you.
वखाई शाह गठरी खोल के जदों फरवानू पुत्र दी लाश वखाई शाह गठरी खोल के जदों फरवानू पुत्र दी लाश वखाई शाह गठरी खोल के जदों फरवानू पुत्र दी लाश वखाई जिन्हें टुकड़े लब गए मैनू मकतल चों ले आया वा आवेख ले जो भर जाए शाह गठरी खोल के जदों फरवानू पुत्र दी लाश वखाई शाह गठरी खोल के जदों फरवानू पुत्र दी लाश वखाई हाथ लभदी पैर लभदी कदी चेहरा लभदी कोई हिस्सा साबत नहीं सी कासम दे पाक बदन दा किवें मां तरतीब बनाए शाह गठरी खोल के जदों फरवानू पुत्र दी लाश वखाई शाह गठरी खोल के जदों फरवानू पुत्र दी लाश वखाई बोल तेरे बन रेनू किवें सहरा लावां मैं सेरा समझ के चादर जदों खोली कासम दे लई विच लाश न पूरी आई शाह गठरी खोल के जदों फरवानू पुत्र दी लाश वखाई शाह गठरी खोल के जदों फरवानू पुत्र दी लाश वखाई कोल मेरे अकबर सी कोल तेरे कासम कुल काफिला विच दो बने रे दोवां दी खून च होई पहली वारी रस्म नाई शाह गठरी खोल के जदों फरवानू पुत्र दी लाश वखाई हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुन बाबा दसवीं नू वीर लाशा चुकदा किंज भरदा सी हवा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा सुन बाबा दसवीं नू वीर लाशा चुकदा किंज भरदा सी हवा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा जदों जख्मी होयो दी गर्दन नैर दे पास वेख के वीर गाजी दा नाल के आखिरी वैन किता बिच उखरियां सावा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा जदों जख्मी होयो दी गर्दन नैर दे पास वेख के वीर गाजी दा नाल के आखिरी वैन किता बिच उखरियां सावा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा सुन बाबा दसवीं नू वीर लाशा चुकदा किंज भरदा सी हवा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बड़ा होगा ओ बाबा वेला सी जीन तो लथे असी जदो गाजी बहना दे कोला के रोया शबीर बड़ा चुम चुम के रिदावा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं
हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बड़ा औखा ओ बाबा वेला सी जीन दौलते असी जदा गाजी बहना दे कोला के रोया शबीर बड़ा चुम चुम के दावा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा शिमर खंजे देवार के दासी वीर तस्बीह खुदा दी परदासी तेरा जरबा देना शिमर ने के गिन के ओदी कट्टियां ने सावा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन सुन बाबा दसवीनू वीर लाशा चुकदा किंज भयदा सी हवा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन बाबा मैं हुसैन खोल के खे मिर्च घटरी बाबा के शबीर आके देख जरा कोई रह गया जे परवाह रेत अंदर टुकड़ा मैं लब के ले आवा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन दा की हाल सुनावा सुन बाबा दसवीनू वीर लाशा चुकदा किंज भयदा सी हवा की हाल सुनावा बाबा मैं हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या
कासिम दी मेहंदी
रेता चुरुल गई मिट्टियां चुरुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता चुरुल गई मिट्टियां चुरुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता चुरुल गई मिट्टियां चुरुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी
सब आंखों दिलावे मौला
कई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता चुरुल गई मिट्टियां चुरुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता चुरुल गई मिट्टियां चुरुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी
सब आंखों दिलावे मौला
रुवावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता चुरुल गई मिट्टियां चुरुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी
कुबरा दा बाबा चादर बिछा के
कुबरा दा बाबा चादर बिछा के चुन चुन के पावे कासिम दी मेहंदी
डुल गई मिट्टियां चुरुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता चुरुल गई मिट्टियां चुरुल गई मानूर वावे
सब बाखोली लावे मौला
कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता च डुल गई
मिट्टियां चिरुल गई
मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता च डुल गई मिट्टियां च रुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी कुबरा दा बाबा चादर बिछा के कुबरा दा बाबा चादर बिछा के चुन चुन के पावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता च डुल गई मिट्टियां च रुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता च डुल गई नूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी
सब बाखोली लावे मौला
मिट्टियां च रुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी
रेता च डुल गई
मिट्टियां च रुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी
मकतल चो सैयद
मैंने पाया कल्ला है नाना ज़हरा दा जाया मकतल जो सैयद मैंने पाया कल्ला है नाना ज़हरा दा जाया कौसर किनारे मेरे टुर गए सारे कौसर किनारे मेरे टुर गए सारे केड़ा उठावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता च डुल गई मिट्टियां च रुल गई मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता च डुल गई मिट्टियां च रुल गई
मानूर वावे कासिम दी मेहंदी रेता च डुल गई मिट्टियां च रुल गई
مسیر دام حسین کبوتر بین الحرمین دل مسیر دام حسین کبوتر بین الحرمین دل مسیر دام حسین کبوتر بین الحرمین عالم مستی اصل بهشت حسین عالم مستی اصل بهشت حسین به روی قلبم خدا نوشته حسین دلم مسیر دام حسین کبوتر بین الحرمین دلم مسیر دام حسین کبوتر بین الحرمین عالم مستی اصل بهشت عالم مستی اصل بهشت حسین به روی قلبم خدا نوشته حسین منی که در عشق تو اسیرم تویی که هستی شاه و امیرم منی که در عشق تو اسیرم تویی که هستی شاه و امیرم آرزو دارم موقع مردن حسین آرزو دارم موقع مردن حسین که توی مجلس روزه بمیرم که توی مجلس روزه بمیرم دلم مسیر دام حسینه کبوتر بین الحرمین امیر کشور دلها حسینه آرامش دل زهرا حسینه قرار سینه مولا حسین حسین قرار سینه مولا حسین حسین همه هستی طه حسین، همه هستی طه حسین، امید زینب کبرا حسین، همگی مجنون و لیلا حسین، حسین حسین. خم و شراب و صحبا تویی تو، ما همه قطره و دریا تویی تو، همگی عبد و مولا تویی تو، شده لبا لب کاسه صبرم حسین، شده لبا لب کاسه صبرم حسین. بارونی چشمای پر ابرم حسین، چی میشه آقا پا بگذاری به سر من شب اول قمرم، به سر من شب اول قمرم حسین حسین حسین. ای امیر و سلطان یا ابوالفضل، راحت قلب و جان یا ابوالفضل، تیغ تو در دستان ابوالفضل، تو را قسم بر جان ابوالفضل حسین، به صفای چشمان ابوالفضل حسین، جدا مکن تا صبح قیامت سر من از دامان ابوالفضل، سر من از دامان حسین 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 حسین. هر که دارد هوس کرب و بلا بسم الله، به ابی انت و امی یا ابا عبدالله حسین 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 حسین. حسین وای حسین وای حسین وای حسین وای حسین وای. ابوالفضل ابوالفضل یا زینب یا زینب یا زینب یا زینب علی 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 Ali 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 Ali. Ya Mahdi Ya Mahdi Ya Mahdi هر دری بسته شود جز در پرفیض حسین. هر دری بسته شود جز در پر فیض حسین. این در خانه عشق است که باز است هنوز. کربلایی نشدم خجلت از این غم دارم، تا ابد در دل خود شور محرم دارم، تا ابد در دل خود شور محرم دارم. السلام علیک یا ابا عبدالله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، بلا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين برحمة الله وبركاته بر من لباس نوکری را کفن کنید. نوکر بهشت هم که رود باز نوکر است. و بالمستضعف الغریب یا مظلوم یا ابا عبدالله اعوذ بالله من الشیطان الرجیم. اما یجیب المضطر اذا دعا و یکشف السوء. 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 بفاطمة و ابیها و بعلها و بنیها السر المستودع فيها. یا الله یا الله یا الله یا الله یا الله یا الله یا رحمان یا رحیم یا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اکفنا یا قاضی الحاجات و یا کافی المهمات انك على كل شيء قدير برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات.